It's winter time.
Winter is in full effect, folks.
I don't like it. It's cold, it's snowing. I don't mind any of that. I just don't want to be out in it.
Yeah.
Like if I could just stay in home and read books, I'd be fucking happy as a clam. Happy as a pig in shit.
But to go out and work in it.
Yeah. I got some news.
Okay.
Not really good news. I think it's good news. It's good news for me. I finally finished that story I've been working on all month, and I submitted it to 2 places.
Nice.
Submitted it to the Fiction Desk and the Missouri Review. Missouri Review, I got the $10 expedited submission fee, so I'm not going to submit to any other places right now just for the fact that, because those both pay, but if I don't get it, I'll submit other places, but I'm not going to submit to like 10 places and then get into one of them when I pay $10 for it. Like, that'd be stupid.
Yeah.
There is another prospect on the horizon that I might submit to as well. Last night, Spencer.
Okay.
I got a copy of that Starlight Review number 5, which is, as far as I know, the last issue of the Starlight Pulp Review.
Okay.
David Scott Hay, who was on the podcast before, we covered his book NSFW. He recommended I submit to them because he just got into number 5. I read his story last night and it fucking weird, man. But it was good, yeah. He used some phrases in there that just fucking were cracking me up. It's like a Wild West story, but with like a weird German goblin monster. I can't even explain.
All right.
But some of the phrasing he uses in there and the way it's written is really good. I'm thinking, after reading how weird his story, if my story falls through at those 2 places, I might be able to just submit it to them.
Yeah.
I still want to write more of a crime story for that, like a pulp story.
Okay, like a weird pulp story, or
it doesn't have to be weird, just because they take they take weird fiction, but they take westerns, crime. You know,
all right.
I want to do a fun crime story because I looked at that Asher Kang story I wanted to finish because I was going to submit that to I think it was called Savage Magazine or something or other. I went on their website.
Ooh, that would be like a perfect fit just for
they're Sword and Sorcery, and they're like, I think they're newer. I'm not sure. But I could have swore they had a submission deadline of January 20th. That turned out to be the Fiction Desk.
Oh.
I don't think they have a deadline, so I don't have to worry about hitting a deadline. So I could put that on the back burner for a minute to do a Starlight Pulp. That opens in February, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm going to see what I could do with that. But like I said, if perchance, because the Fiction Desk is supposed to get back to you 2 to 4 weeks, so a month. Missouri Review, since I did the expedited, I should be able to get back within the month, I would think.
You would hope so.
So if I don't get either of those, because those are pretty lofty, like the Fiction Desk, like they have awards and stuff you can be nominated for, and they pay decent. Missouri Review is one of the most prestigious reviews out there. They pay decent, and they have a cool book. So getting in there is pretty hard. I've submitted to both of those publications twice in the past and got rejected both times. Though the Missouri Review really liked my one story, they just didn't take it because it wasn't like what they published.
Yeah.
But they said it was really funny and stuff, so that's good. I can't get that fucking story published anywhere, by the way. It's a longer one as well. That's another thing. When you have these long stories, it's hard because sometimes these places like, well, we pay, per word.
Right,
We don't want to pay that many words, you fucking jerk. But the Starlight Pulp Review, they actually take up to like anything under 20,000 they prefer.
Oh, that's good.
20,000 they said is more novella territory, and I think they might publish novellas. So that's something to look forward to. Though. But I'll have to show you their book. I have to bring it down. It looks really fucking cool. So I would like to get into that as well. Like I said, I'm going to submit something to that regardless. They only pay, I think, $25 a story, though, if I'm correct. So, and the same with that Savage Magazine. I think they only pay $25 a story, and I think they both give you an issue of the book or something, which is cool, because that's like a $20 book or $15 or whatever. But the fact that I would be getting paid is at least a bonus. But the story I have currently, I would prefer that to get more money because that was a very hard story to finish.
Yeah.
Whereas like an Asher Kang story, I'm fine with $25 because those aren't really that hard for me to write.
Right.
They're more fun. Things that are more fun and aren't as literary, I can. I don't care if I don't get as much money. Versus like that Hear the Peddler's Song story, that I would like to get like preferably at least $100.
Yeah.
If not a couple hundred, because that was a hard fucking story to write. If you read it, you'll understand. You'll be like, oh goddamn, Caleb, you're an asshole for writing that. I'm a fucking dickhead for writing that, because I've read some of it on here, and I've definitely did a lot of editing and rewriting and making that not more. Well, I guess more palatable because I think I messaged you when I finished. It's like, you ever just finish writing something and then immediately, like, fuck, I hate it. It's awful.
Yeah.
Well, I gave it a couple days. I went back and reread it again, and I was like, okay, I do like this. I just got to work on some stuff. So I did a couple more editing passes, some rewrites, rearranged things, put the puzzle pieces together to fit better. When I went back and reread it, I really like it now.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, I think I got it. I made it a little less purple. I got rid of some of the, 'cause when I first go, we talked about this in the past. When I first go into a story like that anyway, sometimes I go like too purple.
Mm-hmm.
Like I go too many words, too long sentences, just too many descriptions. But when I go back and pare all that down, I find that's when I get the good stuff. So I don't have a problem killing my darling. Some people, they really struggle with, I really like that phrase or that sentence. Or if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
I could save it for something else if I need it.
Yeah, you can always use it again.
Yeah. That's my news. Do you have any news before we go into the show?
Not anything really worth talking about. I've done I've tried to do a little bit of writing. I've got done days where I've got a couple, sentences here and there on a story, but nothing notable quite yet.
Well, we're gonna start up a writing session. Well, we were supposed to last week, but we had a blizzard.
Yeah.
So hopefully we won't have a blizzard
this week,
Monday. So you can come over and we can start fucking knocking shit out again. Anyway, I'm not sure what the episode's about today, but we'll figure that out while these musical introductions take place. You are listening to the Drunken Ben Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Carolina Coochie Contaminator Church.
Aw.
I was trying to go with something with cockroach,
Yeah.
but then that got replaced.
I can see.
Because contaminating cockroaches, that's not that exciting.
No, I mean, they're mostly contaminated to begin with.
You know what? That's a goddamn stereotype. Cockroaches are very clean, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard they clean a lot. That doesn't mean they're clean. That just means they clean themselves.
Right.
Like, my cats are clean because they always bathe, but then they got shit on their ass. So they walk around with that dirty butthole. Is that really clean? I don't know.
Trying to wag it in your face. Look at it, Dad. Look at it.
Wake up, I'm hungry. Smell it. Smell it.
You just got fucking Rikishi'd by your cats.
Yeah. So going into the new year, Spencer.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be our actual real episode of the new, because the first one we did last week to kick off the whole new year was a wrestling episode. Because things have been tough around here, and things are still tough around here. We still haven't got a new mix or anything, but we're making do. I haven't heard any guests wanting to come on recently because I told everyone, get us in January, maybe we'll think about it. I thought with the new year, everyone makes resolutions and wants to change and do better and be better people, be nicer and kinder. So I thought we'd shit on some stuff.
Oh.
I thought we'd be assholes for a minute.
I like it.
All right, Spencer. I'm going to have what is a controversial take.
Okay.
I've towed the line in the past of being nice about this. I've been one of those guys that's like, well, as long as you're taking it in, whatever. And I will continue to do that. But I want to say this. Listening to audiobooks is not reading. It's fucking not. Because I had to look at so many people who were posting on Instagram their books they read this year.
Right.
They read this year, and they're in the 400, 500, 600 range.
Oh, yeah, that's not
One person I saw had 650 books. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm sure a lot of these are just 100, 200 page books, or a lot of romance or easy reads. And a lot of them were, but when I was looking at because they all made videos and stuff and it showed their books, there were some that would slip in there where well, no, that's a Game of Thrones book.
Yeah.
You read 5 Game of Thrones books this year as well. And I'm like, did you though? And then I started digging deeper, and a lot of these people would very slightly mention at the end of their long paragraph about, the books I read and listened to.
Yeah.
Or, I listened to, and then they'll say 348 books this year. And I was like, okay, so your numbers are a lot less then.
Yeah, because you could just you could probably listen to a book a day where you're at work, where you're working or whatever.
Yeah. And here's the thing, because if you say you have a book that's 200 some pages, it takes 8 or 9 hours to technically read if you read straight through it or what. I don't even think it would be that long. I think Crime and Punishment, they said you can read in 9 hours. So whatever the audio book is, like if you're reading out loud. So usually like a normal book would be in that range. So that's one work shift generally.
Right.
Maybe the car ride too. So here's where it is. Because in the past, I've always been like, well, one, obviously if you have a disability, fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, or if you're just older and your eyesight's going, fine. Or some people actually do listening to stories, they retain the information and they comprehend the information better than they do reading it.
Yeah.
That's fine too. We're all different learners. I have no problem with any of that. But you still can't say you read it.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
It's not you're not doing the act of reading.
And people like say it's semantics, or they say scientifically it's actually the same. Like you retain the information the same way. I don't. When I listen to a story, my brain's activated differently than when I read it.
Right.
And maybe it's because I'm a writer. When I read, I'm also looking at the literary aspects, the way it's written, the style, the word choices, the punctuation. Because when you hear somebody reading, you don't know if they're using semicolons.
Right.
You don't know if they're using M dashes. And personally, in my brain, that changes the way the sentences are arranged because, say, you use a semicolon. Well, now I know that the next sentence is directly related to the first one because you use a semicolon. When somebody reads that out loud, I don't think about that at all.
Yeah.
It changes the way I appreciate a book.
Becomes more of a performance.
Yeah, which is fine, but you can listen to radio shows. That's not the same as reading,
Yeah.
If you read the transcript, I think a good example is if you read screenplays.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're different than the movies. That's why a lot of people say if you really want to appreciate Shakespeare, you have to watch a good play. You can't read it and get the same appreciation. I read some Shakespeare last year, and I appreciated the literary aspects of it, but at the same time, I'm like, I could get how this would probably be better because it's a play.
Right.
Like you see people perform it, and you get the gravitas of their performance and everything. And you're like, oh no, this is the way it's supposed to be. When you read it, it's up to you to interpret how these characters are acting and whatnot. But it's not the same. So you could say you read Shakespeare, or you could say you've watched Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I've never watched Shakespeare other than movies. I've never seen a Shakespeare play, so I can't say I've actually enjoyed Shakespeare the way it's supposed to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
The same way I don't think you can say you enjoyed reading The Sound and Fury if you listen to it. It's just not the same.
Well, then also too, because depending on like what they do, because like sometimes like it can either be like just like a straight person's just reading the novel to you. Sometimes it's more of like an audio thing where they like, they'll add like creepy background music if something's going on. So that changes how, you don't get that kind of stuff when you're reading it.
No. And I've had to, when I've read some more difficult works or just works that got too boring, I've listened, like, Divine Comedy, Paradiso, I listened to it. Yeah, I read the first 2 books and all the notes. The third book, I just got tired. I listened to it and it was not the same.
Yeah.
And I did not retain that information nearly the same as I did when I read it. So there's just something to be said for reading versus listening. I think there should be a separate category. I don't think it's offensive. Like if you read Crime and Punishment or you listen to Crime and Punishment, I'm not going to say you don't know Crime and Punishment. Yeah. I'm just going to say you didn't read Crime and Punishment. I can honestly say, because I'm reading it now, that when I'm done, I didn't actually read Crime and Punishment because I'm reading an English translation. So again, semantics, it's not that important, but it does bug me when you say you read 600 something books and you didn't actually, because the time it would have taken, it's not the same Herculean feat that you're making it out to be.
That would be like if I did that, but like I counted like every single comic, like every issue of every comic I read last year, you know what I mean?
And that's another one is, because we talked about like on my reading goals, because I just put everything on Goodreads, so if it's a graphic novel, I'll put I read a graphic novel or whatever, but it's not a separate category. So it just shows up as total books read. I don't view reading comics the same, unless it's like a Watchmen or something. But even so, outside of the prose aspects of it, like the just reading the bubbles in a comic, that's not the same as reading a book.
Right.
And you can still say you're reading, but like poetry reading. Like I read a lot of poetry collections every year. Reading a poem is not the same as reading a book. Unless it's, like there's epic poems and stuff, but there's just many aspects to it that I think people need to stop generalizing. And it's fine because I'm looking into like these people. I'm not saying all of them are like bragging about they read this many books and stuff and are claiming they didn't listen to them or trying to hide the fact. They just don't view it as anything different. Like one thing that really bothers me, I've gone on Goodreads, and a lot of times when I look at a book, the negative reviews almost always someone who listened to it versus someone who read it. And I'm like, you shouldn't be able to review the book if you listen to it because,
or at least you shouldn't. You could review it on Audible.
Yeah,
if you
review the Audible version because because a lot of them they'll talk about, oh, I didn't like the way it was read. Well, what the fuck? That's you can't blame the book for that. You can't blame the author. Wasn't the author's intent most likely to have somebody read this out loud, and that's the version you get? That bugs the shit out of me. But I get so maybe 1-star review. I only listened to 2 hours of it, and I couldn't listen anymore. I'm like, listen. You couldn't listen to it anymore. I'm like, why is that the fucking...
And those are two, we've talked about this before when we talked about like audiobooks and stuff like that. Of just like, and not meaning to, just like zoning out.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, okay, so like, did you
How much are you actually retaining?
Yeah, like, are you not liking it because you're not paying attention to what you're, like, you know, is it just on in the background and you don't know, you missed something and you're like, oh, this book is dumb, it makes no sense. Or like, or did you just not listen to it all?
I have that problem a lot, actually. I listened to that, not hardcore, history of literature podcast with Jack Wilson. And he's always talking about different books and stuff. I'm selective with that. I just pick ones I want to listen to. So it's like an author or a book that he's talking about I want to listen to. I'll do that. And sometimes he does readings. So the last couple of years, he posted a reading of James Joyce's The Dead. I've read that story. I like that story. And I like his reading of the story. But when I'm listening to it and I'm driving at work and I'm making stops and, you know, again, just zoning out, you're driving, my attention's not completely on it. So if I didn't read it, I wouldn't get that whole story. I don't know how unless you're just sitting in a room listening to it. Like most people that listen to audiobooks are at the gym or doing laundry. They're doing things. So you're not getting, I'm sorry, unless you're a savant or something, you're not retaining that information the same. So I don't think you could categorize that as I read the book. Even if you're, have a disability and you can't read, and you listen to it, and I mean, I would imagine some of those people are actually like how they would read. They're sitting there just listening to it. That's fine. I would even say, okay, maybe you can still say you read the book then. But if you're doing other shit, it's like bowling. You can't say it's a sport if fucking 90-year-olds could do it.
But again, it's that weird thing that we find ourselves in with like the uses of words of just like reading and listening. Two different things. I personally, you've read it or you've listened to it. Like, if there was like a new musician that you liked or you were interested in, but you went online and you read their lyrics before listening to their music, it's like it's not the same thing. It's not how it's supposed to be, taken in.
Well, that's like imagine judging a song based on reading the lyrics.
Yeah.
But you didn't hear the song. And you said, oh, that's a shit song. Well, some songs, it's literally how they're performed that make them good.
Right.
The lyrics are dog shit half the... Like, look at the whole Nirvana's, most of their catalog is like, if you read it, you'd be like, what the fuck is this shit? He's not even making words.
Yeah.
It's I that the best way to go about it, at least if you're listening to, like, say, a James Joyce Ulysses, I think that's when... if you listen to, it would definitely have more a performative aspect that you could understand better than reading it. But I think the best way to go about it is to read it alongside that.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're going into difficult works, I think that's what I'm going to do when I read Ulysses. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to listen, because I found a podcast that has the chapters. I'm going to listen to the performance, like the radio. It was a radio show or something. I'm going to listen to the chapters after I read it so I can get a double dose. I think that would really help. But that's with that stuff. I can say if you're listening to, let's say, a Stephanie Meyer Twilight book. I don't know why you do that, but let's say you're listening to Twilight, the audiobook, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to miss anything that... Like if you read it or listened to it, I think it's gonna be the same experience because it's not that good. Like a Stephen King, I think a lot of his work, it's just the writing style. You can listen to it, and I don't think as long as the performance is good, the reading's good, I don't think it's gonna be that much of a different. Like you probably retain most of the information the same because the way he writes. But like a Game of Thrones, I don't think that would work. Or a lot of classic literature, like a Hemingway, I think you could do that with. I think a lot of Hemingway stories you can listen to and you might actually get it better.
Because of just how kind of bare
bones and like the way someone reads it, you might, because that Midnight in Paris movie, it was a Woody Allen movie. Owen Wilson, he keeps going back in time in old Paris and he's like, he meets a young Hemingway And Hemingway talks to him the way his stories are written. And the way the performance is, you're like, oh, if he read it like that, the story would be better.
Now, what do you think about Lord of the Rings?
I really want to listen to the Andy Serkis version of it because I listened to snippets and I'm like, that's awesome. But the way I would go about it is I would read it at the same time he was doing it.
Because like I've like whenever like on Spotify I was just looking around and stuff and they have like audiobooks and they have like multiple different now they're probably not as good versions but like audio versions of the Lord of the Rings, novels. And I was like, I wonder how that would be just because of like with like the the language
and the songs.
Yeah.
Like with all the singing, I think that would actually really help. And it'd probably make it a lot less dry for people who are not into but again, these are more challenging works.
Right.
Like a Silmarillion, I think I would love to listen to that because
that's
I would
more
finally
just like a textbook, right? Or like, or like a history book.
But you'd be able to like even Crime and Punishment, if I listened to it, I'd be like, oh, that's how you pronounce these fucking names.
Well, that's what whenever you brought up Game of Thrones, I was like, actually, maybe Game of Thrones would help with me because it's just all the different names and places and shit like that.
Things that are real difficult, you get bogged down by the actual, for instance, names and the pronunciations and the places, and there's so much information coming at you that listening to it, like there's benefits to both.
Yeah.
I'm just bare bones fucking gripe. I don't think you can say you read something if you listen to it. That's it. I don't think that should be controversial, but apparently it is.
I kind of did like what you were saying with the reading, like that's what I did with like a lot of the Poe poems I read last year. It's like I read the poem and then I found somebody like a video of somebody reading it on on YouTube just to make sure like I wasn't missing anything or like didn't catch something with within the way that he was writing.
Yeah, I find poetry is one of those things since it's pretty much made to be read out loud.
Yeah.
It almost is always better to do what you just said. I find that a lot of poems I really like, I go and listen to it, and I find I like it better. When ones I don't understand, I understand when I listen to it. For instance, that Rudyard Kipling's Boots poem. I've read that a bunch of times, and I get it, but I never felt it. And then they used it in the trailer for that 28 Years Later movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a classic reading from like some dude in the 50s. It hit so fucking hard, I got chills. I was like, holy shit. Like, I get it now. Because it's like this manic, like, you're just constantly marching and marching. And that's worse than anything. Like, there's this constant marching of 20,000 plus soldiers. It gets so frantic, and you can see the guy going like the people going crazy and shit, that it's worse than the shootings and the war. It's just the fucking relentless marching, and you get that when you listen to the poem. But if you read it yourself, unless you're one of those people who are probably just a natural performer who could bring that out of the work, you do not get it the same. So poetry, I always recommend listening to. I find I enjoy poetry read a lot more than I enjoy reading it. Which is funny because a lot of fiction I read that's poetic, such as like Suttree, I really enjoyed reading it, but I wondered, like, if I listened to somebody read that, like a good like audiobook of it, how much more would I like it?
Yeah.
Because then also it's easier. So it takes your brain off the laborious aspects of it where you're sitting there and like trying to concentrate. You can kind of let it wash over you more. That's why like a James Joyce Ulysses or even a fucking Impossible Finnegan's Wake is more enjoyable if you listen to it because you can let it wash over you. And if you don't understand what they're talking about, that's fine. But when you're reading it, you get frustrated.
Do you know that if there's a Jerusalem
audio? Yeah, I think Alan Moore did it.
Oh my, I don't know if I could do it then.
Why?
He's
a great reader.
I mean, yeah, but he has just like that old man English accent, and then I just know like that just the beard's so crusty coming out, like the sounds coming out of that crusty beard, like, and I don't know. I mean, it'd probably make most sense because like how he like made up his language and stuff in that book and stuff like that. But
can I tell you something's gonna piss you off?
All right.
I'm very strongly thinking about reading Jerusalem again this year.
I get this year
because I got those 3 books now instead of the one big book.
True. Okay.
Because I took so long to read it the first time, I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as I would have if I read it in one go. So I'm thinking at the end of the year, I might just see where I'm at reading wise. If I hit all the books I want to, I think I'm gonna go instead of reading Lord of the Rings again. I think I'm gonna read Jerusalem again.
Oh, you're gonna.
And who's gonna join me? You.
No, Mike can join you.
Mike, you're gonna read Jerusalem with me.
It was funny because at the book club that you didn't make it to, we were with it being an Alan Moore book, V for Vendetta. we were talking about like other, stuff, and then so Jerusalem got brought up, and we told them, we were telling the group how it took you like 3 years to read that thing in total. At least 2. It might have, right? At least 2.
I mean,
from when you very started, because you started that before you moved, right?
Yeah, and then I finished it in this house. It took quite a while. I read like half of it and then just took like a multi-year break. It was almost, it wasn't as extreme, or it was more extreme, but it was almost like when I read Moby Dick and then like halfway through, I fucking read 5 other novels and then went back and finished Moby Dick. And I read those 5 novels in like a month and a half.
He's just like, God damn it. I was hoping to take longer with those 5 novels.
All right, so here's a quick segue.
All right.
I want to discuss something that is, it's not the audiobook thing, but it goes along with the people who tend to read a lot of audiobooks, listen to a lot of audiobooks. The easier books. Like a lot of people are reading easier books and then they listen to more challenging books, which is fine as long as you're getting the information, I guess. But I wanted to discuss the aspect of easy reading books. Do you think that should be a separate category?
You mean books that are just like not as difficult to read?
Yeah, so say you read A Catcher in the Rye, and that's considered a classic. Should that be in the same category as Great Gatsby? You know?
Because Gatsby's a little bit easier of a read?
Gatsby's way harder.
Harder than Catcher in the Rye?
Yeah, it's shorter, but it's way harder.
Okay.
Or, here's an example you probably better understand. Let's say you read Invisible Man by H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
Or you read the, what is it? The Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft.
Or, yeah.
Both considered just classics in the genre, but do you think the H.G. Wells Invisible Man should be in the exact same category as the H.P. Lovecraft?
So, like, that's hard too, because they're both genre as well. Like,
yeah, that's where we're really getting into it. I just wish there was, like, on Goodreads, separate categories for fiction, like, not just sci-fi, but, like, I wish they had a difficulty grade.
Yeah, like, this is hard.
Yeah, like, I don't know why they can't just develop an algorithm that's like, oh, if you read Ulysses, that puts you on the top of the list for a difficult book. And then it doesn't have to factor into your total books of the year, but I think I would love it if you, it's a little snobby, but I would love it if at the end of the year you got like a difficulty rating too. It's like, hey, you read in the top 99% of difficulty, like, you know, you're the 1% of readers who were able to read this, reach this difficulty level of an 8 or out of 10. I don't know what the levels would be, but let's say a 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
1 would be if you just read a bunch of kids' books.
Yeah.
You know, 5 is if you're just reading
like YA.
Yeah, YA and maybe some cheap romances and eroticas and stuff and badly written shit. Then, you know, you get some David Foster Wallace's and stuff that are near the top. I just think that would be really cool if you could separate that a little bit. And then that way when people have, I read 650 books this year, but my reading level is a 3. Like, okay, so 3 out of 10, I don't feel as irritated even if whether you listen to them or not. I don't feel like, oh, you just like completely dusted my reading. I only read 10 books this year, but then, oh, I read the whole Fall of the Roman Empire select collection or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know how you would do that without implementing some kind of like, you need some kind of AI to...
They have the technology. All they have to do is go through the list of most difficult books that are fucking all over the internet. We've covered them multiple times on this podcast.
Well, I mean, no, they would have to like, every book would have to have been scanned to have a difficulty to be put into a difficult...
Well, that's the thing. So when you have like all the classics and stuff, you can assign a grade to those or a level. But when you get to the thousands of indie books, hundreds of thousands of indie books and stuff, that's how would you get that? How would you be able to decipher whether it's considered
Again, as a writer, you'd probably have to like let your story get sucked into the program, and then it's like, well, do I want my work to go into that program to be like studied to, you know?
And then that would be an interesting aspect, by the way, is as a writer to just be like, where's my book? Like, what's my level?
Yeah.
Because you might not even realize, like, what's my writing level? Am I considered a hard read? Because, like, some of my stuff I think probably could be considered a hard read. It's not for me, but I wrote it, so I don't fucking know. But, like, if like that story I just finished, if I gave that to somebody who only reads YA, I think they'd have a fucking hard time. But if I gave that to somebody who loves Cormac McCarthy, they'd probably be like, "Oh, this is a cheap knockoff.
Yeah.
It needs to be better."
You could tell somebody's been reading some McCarthy when they were writing this.
Yeah. But going just back to like the reading levels and stuff, that would be challenging. I don't know if you would just be able to do traditionally published, or I don't know how you'd be able to get around that, but it would be really cool if you could have assigned levels though. So it's like, hey, my goal this year, I only want to read 5 or 10 books, but I want to make sure they're all level 10s or something,
Yeah.
you know? I'm not looking at it from like, oh, I'm a braggart. I want to fucking be in the top and be like, oh, I read all these snobby, hard to read books that no one else can read. I'm looking at it more as one, challenging yourself, and two, just being able to say that, like last year I read a bunch of 6s. Well, this year I moved up. I'm reading 7. So I'm actually improving as a reader and being able to read more difficult books and understand them, not just read them. When you get to level 10 of just Finnegan's Wake and shit, you could probably be like, this is too hard, and you go back down.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I wish we had levels.
Well, that would probably then would also make people feel bad about themselves, and you really can't have too much of that.
Yeah, but you got a bunch of assholes bragging about they read 700 books this year,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Did you?
did you? You read fucking 320 kids' books. Is that hard?
Yeah, that'd be like me whenever like I'm over at my niece and I read I read her a book, but that counts.
That counts. I read it. Yeah.
I read this book 3 times. Each one counts.
I don't know. I don't like that shit. Honestly, I don't even like the social aspect of Goodreads or any of those reading things. Where it's like some people find, we like to talk about books. That's cool. I like to talk about books. I haven't found anybody on there that reads the same books I read, so that doesn't work.
I mean, it's nice as like to have like that catalog of like what you've read.
That's what I use it for, is just cataloging and not necessarily reviewing, but being able to go, it appears I like this book that I read 10 years ago. Maybe revisit it or something, but
or maybe like I don't know if it does Goodreads like let you know when like an author that you've read before maybe has like a new workout or anything.
Yeah,
like
they sent me like, that's how I found out about the new Murakami book. They sent me an email.
Because I know like the Kindle and stuff like say will like. Well, even like whenever like there was like a comic book, we'll be like, because there's like this Tom King guy, I bought his book on Kindle, I haven't read it yet, but like it was like his first thing he did before getting into comics. Yeah. But it would give me like, an author Tom King has a new, and it'd be like for whatever comic that he's, that I could get like digitally or whatever.
Right.
But
hey, can I go communist China?
Can you go?
Yeah. Well, you know how they have like the fucking social score and all that shit now, and all this dystopian nightmare shit. Well, here's my version of that for Goodreads.
Okay.
I think this would actually be beneficial. So one of my main complaints is I read a lot of reviews for books, and like the shit reviews, I've talked about how some of them are just people who listen, or a lot of them are just, I didn't read this book, I didn't like the cover, or just something fucking dumb.
Yeah.
I think what would really help, because some of them seem legitimate, but then there's like reviews very snarky and seems mean-spirited. And then it turns out if you actually look at this person only reads sci-fi, why the fuck are they reviewing The Great Gatsby? Like, But I think if you put that hardness level score next to their name, so it's like, hey, this person averages 6.5 on the difficult reading scale, and then they're reading, they review Suttree by Cormac McCarthy and give it a dog shit rating. If I see that, or even a lower rating, let's say they only read 3.5s, and I'm like, well, Suttree's probably like an 8 or so. So if they're reading that, and I look at what their average book score is, like they probably are not going to like that kind of book. I don't have to take it as serious.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to like what I'm liking. I think that would be helpful. But then that might actually stop people from reviewing shit they shouldn't be reviewing as well.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to give War and Peace a shit review because it's really long and all this stuff, when people could just easily see that I only read YA.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I'm not going to like Russian literature from the 1900s or whatever. And then I wanted to become a novelist and have my books rated.
Yeah.
And then I want people to judge my books by the difficulty scale.
And I'd imagine you'd want a difficult, like as a writer, would you want like a more difficult level? I mean, I guess it all depends on what
it's
kind of...
It's got to be approachable.
On what kind of story you're telling.
All right, well, we have to set quick parameters, so we'll end on this. So, 1, kids' books. 10, Finnegan's Wake. Infinite Jest, Gravity's Rainbow.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Okay, yeah, that seems about, yeah.
If you want to put Infinite Jest and Gravity's Rainbow to 9, just because Finnegan's Wake's like the definitive fucking impossible to read book.
Okay.
We could do that, but they could easily be 10s as well. But that's the parameters, right? And then let's say a 5 and a 6 would be, I Okay, like a Blood Meridian, I would say like an 8 or 9.
Okay.
So what would be a 5 and 6? Maybe like a Crime and Punishment or a War and Peace. Like the length will get you, but the actual reading's not that difficult. So that's the parameters. I would be fine at like a 5 or 6 generally, but I would like to have a work that's in the 8 or 9 range for more mature readers. I would probably, like, if I was able to become a novelist, like a semi-successful novelist that I could focus on that, I would probably alternate. Like one book will be, maybe even do my Kate Kowalski and have like more fluff books that are in the 3 to 4 range just to make me money.
Yes.
And then, or just be fun to write. Because that's the thing for me. It's not necessarily about just making money. Sometimes I do just want to write something I think is fun to write. It's not hard to read. That I could be like, oh, a bunch of people will like this story. It's either gory or funny or whatever, and that's fine. But then sometimes I want to write a story. I was like, well, this I actually want to like people to have to sit down and contemplate, and it's a hard read.
Yeah.
But not just hard for hard's sake. Like I don't want to write something that's just like everyone throws the book in frustration. Like imagine writing a whole book that nobody's gonna understand. What the fuck's the point? What about you? Where would you want to be on that list?
I mean, well, considering how if we just go by that scale, I'm probably reading somewhere within the 3 to 4s, probably.
Yeah.
So I imagine my writing probably wouldn't be too much higher than that.
Well, what would you say the hardest book on that level that you've read would be? And you can count Blood Meridian if you want, because you read half of it.
I mean, it would either be that, or like, where would you put like the Divine Comedy? I mean, that'd probably be like the fucking most challenging thing.
I would put that as maybe a 6 or 7, because we didn't read the original Italian, obviously, but. Like I said, I did when we did that. We never actually did an episode on it. It's too daunting. I did pick one of the more reader friendly and more entertaining translations. So I would say the one we read was probably a 6 or a 7. It also, it's how you view poetry. Leading up to that, I read a bunch of ancient Greek stuff, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid. So I was able to get into that probably a little easier than you did. But I read all the fucking notes at the end of the things too. So yeah, that would be like a 6 or a 7. But again, did you find like other than Paradiso, did you find like the writing was actually difficult, or just more like I'm getting a little bored, or I keep getting losing focus?
Yeah, I mean, but I probably wouldn't have got so bored if it wasn't like so. Maybe it was just daunting the amount of it.
Yeah.
But then I'd say probably maybe the other difficult thing would maybe be like H.P. Lovecraft. Would he be like the 6? You think he'd be like the 5-6 area? Because like you said, it's genre, but it's like that weird,
I'd put him a 6 or 7.
6 or 7?
Yeah, because his vocabulary choices sometimes are.
I've read like 25% of his, catalog. So
where would you rate like Native Son? Because I didn't find that was a difficult read from what I remember, but the themes could be challenging, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, like that's one of those things where like it tackles difficult things, but the writing itself isn't like really hard, like because like that's what like I like that book I liked a lot with like the dialogue in that book.
Yeah,
but I would maybe put that like at like maybe like a 5 just because maybe the subject matter and stuff like that.
You know what's interesting is I would say you could put Hemingway at a 2 or 3.
Again, just because of the simplicity of it.
You consider him a literary giant, but the actual reading, I would say maybe like The Old Man and the Sea would be a 4. But I mean, reading wise, it's not difficult. I read most of his books now, and I didn't find any of them difficult. Versus like F. Scott Fitzgerald, like The Great Gatsby, that's probably like a 6 or a 7, just because the language. See, that's the thing too, is like I'm skewed because I always gravitated towards difficult reads because. When I really got into literature, I was reading Poe. So I read a lot of his stories and stuff, and his language is very difficult. So I kind of got skewed from Jump Street. I never just started off with like, I'm going to read like fucking very easy stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that would be something maybe we should start putting whenever we review books or anything from now on. It's just like also mention the difficulty level.
Yeah.
I think Goodreads won't do it for us, but we could do it ourselves.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I'll rate quickly the last few books I read, and then we can end it. And you could do it too if you want. The Haunting of Hill House, I will rate that a 4.
Yeah, I think that about 4, yeah.
You didn't read that.
Wait, no, sorry. No, I was getting confused with
Same thing.
Yeah.
I'd still say a 4. Satri, I would give that a 7 or an 8. I can see people really struggling with that, but that's the exact kind of language I like.
Right, yeah, that's what you're into.
That's the exact level. So I think for you, a Satri would be an 8 or a 9.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I maybe a 7, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. A bunch of books that are ours. Independent People, I would give that a 3 or 4. I just thought it was boring. Child of God by Cormac McCarthy, I would give that a 4 or 5. And Ushers by Joe Hill, I'd give that a 2, maybe a 1 even. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I'd give that a solid 4 or 5. So yeah, that's where we'll do our parameters. Like you said, you probably read a lot of 3 to 4s, maybe some 5s in there. So maybe here's what we'll end it on. Pick a goal for a
like a toughness
7 to 10 book that you want to read this year. It only has to be one.
Okay.
I don't know how difficult Confederacy of Dunces is going to be. I don't think it's very. I feel like that's probably a 4 or 5. But as far as just some more difficult books, do you have anything on the horizon that you think would be a challenge besides Alan Moore's Jerusalem, which you're going to read?
Not at the moment, but other than like these like that, like I had like kind of like my first couple books of the year planned out, but like after like that, I don't really have anything in the motion. I figured there would be something that we'd be reading that's more on the difficult level because that's something we kind of tend to do when we're reading something together. It's normally
harder.
Yeah.
Confederacy of Dunces. I don't think it's challenging, but it's the year. Was that the 70s or I don't know. But I didn't look too much into it. Maybe we'll read like the Canterbury Tales or something fucking excruciatingly difficult, like the original Canterbury Old English, or maybe the old. It'd be fun to do is read the. I have it. That's another one I need to put on my list this year. Is the original King Arthur Tales.
Yeah.
The what is it, De Morte Arthur or whatever. Thomas Mallory. I'm sure those will be difficult. John Steinbeck really fucking killed my lust for questing. Like he fucking made me not want to read about a quest. I had trouble with Don Quixote at times just because of the questing. I was like, oh, can you use a different word, please?
But at least they were doing something.
Well, also
they were actually questing,
but it was satirical questing. Like they thought they were questing, but it was just blundering stupidity throughout. So I was fine with that because I knew they weren't going to accomplish an actual quest. They weren't fighting giants; they were fighting waterfalls and shit, and fucking windmills, and like they were just bungling everything.
No, where would you put that on the difficulty level?
4.
It's just big.
I mean, I know some Spanish. I didn't read the Spanish version, but obviously some Spanish is still gonna bleed through, like names and stuff. But so pronunciation, I had no problem. For you, maybe a 5 or 6. I'd recommend you read Don Quixote.
I was thinking about maybe,
it's split into 2 books, so you could read book 1, which is like half of the book. So you could read the first book and then maybe take a break and read some other stuff, and then because that's what I did. I then go back and read the second book. You'll get it just the same, and it's fine.
Yeah, because I was thinking about maybe that, like finding out, your version and seeing if I can find like a Kindle version of, just so I'm not carrying around this huge fucking tomb of a book,
But that's one of those ones that's really fun. It is enriching. Like I found that definitely enriched my life because not just because it's such a lighthearted, fun read, but some of the themes and stuff in there. Like after reading that, I actually thought like I want to be more not just courageous in my life when I go into doing different things and taking more chances, but just to be a better person. Like the chivalry, like it's like satire, but at the same time, it's like as much as Don Quixote is a fucking fool, like he does it all with his heart in the right place. So you just like you could look at that and go, you know what, I could help people more. I could be a better person.
He's just from the description of I've heard you talk about it, it's kind of like he's like the blithering idiot, but his heart's in the right place.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's a message you'll probably like. It's fun. It is a lot of fun. And that's one of those ones too. It's like then you can say you read the first like modern novel, and then you could also say that.
And then the panties come flying off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I am reading Don Quixote. You gotta say it like that. Don Quixote by Cervantes. That was our episode. So if you want us to talk about other stuff, you can message us on any of the following platforms: Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and I guess YouTube comments at DPW Podcast. We have an email, but I don't know where you look it up. It's on something probably. I'm not giving it to you.
If you want to, you'll find it.
You'll find it. You can follow me at calebjamesk.com to see all my books you can purchase or read for free or whatever's up and out there. Spencer is OnlyFans. He is the Carolina Coochie Contaminator. What he is actually doing is, this is going to be a little fucked up. He has different vials: SARS, avian flu, COVID-19, and he's just going around sprinkling them on, splashing at times on coochies. Spritzing. He got a little spritzer. He got one of those fucking one of those barber sprayers. He's just spreading dirty. He's making the cooties contaminated. The coochies, not cooties. He's giving coochies cooties. So you could have been the coochie cootie. You know what? We're done. We're done.